Hey, how's it going, Karrion?
Very good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. You got a match with Dominik Dijakovic coming up this week on NXT. He's been a part of NXT for almost 3 years now. Has mixed it up with a lot of top talent in that time. Is this a match you've been looking forward to having now for a while because of the great chemistry you guys are bound to have and how crucial of a win this would be for you?
Absolutely, it is. This is a match that almost happened on the Independents several times, and I'm very happy for the very first time we're going to be doing it on Wednesday. It's going to be very explosive. Absolutely guaranteed.
Do you see beating Dominik Dijakovic as your next step towards challenging Keith Lee for his newly won NXT championship, given their history inside the ring?
That is the idea. That is exactly what we're going for. There's going to be, it's going to be personal, but it's going to be professional, and I think that by the end of it, I think all of the questions are going to be answered as to who should be getting the next title shot.
And you've worked with people so far in your NXT run with a wide variety of styles, from Leon Ruff to Tommaso Ciampa Takeover to Bronson Regis recently, now Dijakovic. Is there a type of competitor whose wrestling style you feel complements you the best?
I've always thought that Lucha Libre complements my style the best, and the reason being is because I am someone that doesn't use a lot of Lucha Libre. However, I am very well versed in it. I know how to identify it. I know how to see it. And ironically, Dijakovic uses a hybrid style of Lucha Libre, despite how big he is, which makes him very interesting. And I think that the styles clashing like that makes for a really good match.
Well, on that same note, what did you learn the most from wrestling in Mexico for the few years that you were with the AAA a couple of years ago?
I learned how to speak a totally different language in the ring, so to speak. Lucha Libre is completely different from what would be perceived as general professional wrestling. Also, with the language barrier, I had absolutely no choice but to be able to read body language and so forth. Eventually, I picked up Spanish, but learning how to read body language, see people coming, know when to come and go and how to spot things, it made me a better sports entertainer and professional wrestler, like light years ahead of where I was before I got there.
And I don't think it's a stretch to say that you have one of the more memorable, cooler entrances right now in WWE, just wrestling on the whole. How important would you say is the entrance to the overall package of a pro wrestler, and how much input did you have in yours?
I think it's absolutely essential to have an entrance that is going to prepare people to know what you're all about as if it's the first time that they're seeing you. I think it's totally imperative. It's absolutely critical. And I had a lot of engagement, and I was just there, I guess you could say, on the front lines in the mud, kind of creating this whole thing together with the NXT community. So I was heavily involved with it.
The feedback to your NXT debut back in April was just incredible, but for you in the current environment, when does it start to set in for you that what you just did was as cool as it was, specifically with the entrance? Is it in the moment, even though there's no fans in attendance? Is it backstage? Is it online? When did it really start to sink in for you?
Well, it sinks in waves, I guess you could say. There is the preparation for it, that in itself is in a way kind of a process of that kind of hitting you, that it's happening. Being out there presently and doing it is a whole other wave, and then the aftermath of it, kind of assessing it retrospectively, and then seeing it on television and the social media following. So it kind of just hits me in waves. The energy that the crew has at NXT is very positive, very strong, very infectious. So we all kind of rally together and support and improve and try to bring out the best version of ourselves there every week. So we have that, and yeah, it's going to be awesome for the future when we have fans there as well. That's going to be a whole nother way for things to kind of set in, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I know that reaction is going to be incredible, no doubt. What some people may not know is that we saw kind of a different incarnation of Karrion Kross about 5 years ago on Raw, teaming with, I believe it was Darren Young, against the Ascension. I think it was back in February of 2015. I mean, obviously, you got to feel readier now for this opportunity to be in NXT, to be in WWE, than you would have been 5 years ago, right?
Sure.
And just with everything, you've accomplished and, just everything going forward, it's going to be cool to see what you accomplish going forward. I know you've mentioned in other interviews that Sean O'Haire had such a huge influence on, the Karrion Kross that we see today. How much of an influence did he and others have on the Karrion Kross that we see currently in NXT?
I definitely think that him, among a few other people, were definitely really inspiring towards something that I wanted to bring to life that I felt really confident and sincere that I could pull off on a consistent basis. I think character continuity is really important and essential for a television show. So when you're trying to find your confidence to stick to something, you have to be really sure. And a lot of the influences that I've had, Sean O'Haire being one of them, I always felt very positive that I could do what I'm doing right now because I was always in love with that type of energy for television programming and stuff like that. Brian Pillman was another guy. I mean, he had something that was so, I guess the word that comes to mind is intangible. He had a magnetic energy where if you were flipping through the television and you had no idea you were watching wrestling, if Brian Pillman was on screen, he could capture your attention, and you were not going to change the channel until he was off of it. And you might stick around just to see if he comes back. I don't know what to call that. I don't know what that is, but it's a feeling. It's something that people make you feel. Steve Austin, The Rock, all of those guys, they had that thing where when people saw them, they knew there was something special about them. And I don't necessarily know if you can find that. I think it's something you need to feel in yourself, and you need to chase it.
And the Karrion Kross that we see now in NXT, it's different than any other incarnation we've seen of you in, AAA, on the independent scene. Is who we're seeing now from you on NXT, would you say the closest to who you are in real life, more of an extension of your actual self?
Not at all. I am a very big believer in character work for television, especially with sports entertainment. It's always kind of been predicated and built towards larger-than-life characters. I think that there is a very, very strong high value in relatable people in sports entertainment, without question, especially with the charity work and all of the public stuff that we do. Relatable people are good, but there is a great value in creating characters that you can't see or find anywhere else. And that was the direction I wanted to go in. That's what made me fall in love with what I'm doing right now as a kid. So I wanted to contribute towards the business in that direction.
And I would say, WWE is probably most known for that more than any other promotion out there right now or previously, just in terms of hosting those characters, really turning it up to a 12 out of 10 type of thing. Was WWE, you've been in wrestling for a while now, was that always the end game? Did you consider signing anywhere else? Was that always, all right, I think this would be where I know where I would thrive, I would thrive at the highest level?
I had considered signing in other places the entire way to getting here. And the only reason I did that was because I wasn't ever sure, when it was going to happen. I knew in my heart that it was going to happen, but when, I couldn't tell you. So what I wanted to do in the meantime, before we got to that day, whenever it was to become as valuable as possible and to get as good as I can before I get here. And that was kind of always in the back of my mind what I was doing. Aside from doing my best to entertain people and improve, I wanted to try to find what was going to be the best version of myself. So when I got here, I was going to be in the best position to contribute to what we're doing.
And as an outsider, before you signed to the NXT earlier this year, watching from the outside, looking in, what were your thoughts on the evolution of NXT from what it started as years ago to what it is now is just, arguably the hottest brand in all of sports entertainment? What were your thoughts on that evolution, and was it somewhere that you thought, okay, I can go here and absolutely kill it, just given my repertoire, character style, and everything else like that?
It's been amazing to see the growth, but I'm not surprised because I think one thing that might not necessarily come to mind when people are thinking about all of the great things that NXT has to offer is the amount of passion, energy, and commitment that every single person on the brand gives when they go out there. You could look at the takeovers, for instance. Those are some of the best shows in WWE history. People go out there and they just absolutely kill it. And it's the way they make people feel. It's not necessarily about all of the things they did, but it was how they made people feel. And people take that with them for the rest of their lives. They'll go back and they'll watch it and they'll talk about it and whatnot, but people never forget how you make them feel. And NXT makes people feel a very special way. And I think that's why people are so loyal to it. And I think that's why it comes back. And I think that's really what makes it very special.
How awesome has it been for you, up to this point, to have your real-life partner, Scarlett, by your side for your WWE journey up to this point? Is it something that you've been wanting for a while before you came to NXT, and it just kind of worked out, under these current circumstances?
We had worked together elsewhere before, and it worked really well. It was very fun, and it was something that we wanted to do, and we're happy that we got to it.
Mm-hmm. And so far, it's become just this amazing act on the show, so it's really cool to see the chemistry you guys have on screen as well. Another thing as well, you mentioned all the other promotions that you've worked for before you came to WWE. You've mentioned it before, but Lucha Underground, and just the impact that had on the entire industry. And it feels like more people are talking about it now than they were then, specifically when it comes to all the cinematic matches. And again, I know you've mentioned this before, but how do you think that promotion kind of set the stage for what we're seeing today with the cinematic matches in WWE, NXT, and beyond?
Well, I've always thought that Chris Joseph was a genius, and he came from WWE, and then he, went over to Lucha Underground, and he brought his creative mind there. So it doesn't surprise me that things have kind of circled back to what you're seeing right now in terms of the cinema stuff. I think that sometimes when things become a really big deal, and they're really cool, and they're really interesting, they were kind of done in small ways prior to that, almost like it was kind of ahead of its time. I think it's really cool that we're doing cinematic stuff, and I think, now more than ever, it's the perfect time to start introducing stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We are in the business of telling stories, and what better way to do that? Especially with WWE. I mean, it's the best entertainment company in the entire world. They can do anything, and this is something that they definitely should be doing, and I'm glad to see it.
And you mentioned before what you learned from working in Mexico as part of AAA. Was there anything specifically that you learned from working in Lucha Underground for the short time that you were there for?
I really found myself there. Mm-hmm. I think everything that people are seeing me do now, while I wasn't necessarily doing it on screen, I think in myself, I found it working there. And I put that away because I knew that one day when I was going to be here in WWE, I really wanted to let that out. Chris Joseph really helped me find that.
And with the matches that you've had so far, again, Tommaso Ciampa had a takeover. Very few people can say they faced as, top of a name in their takeover debut going into Wednesday's Dijakovic match. Is there anyone else aside from the obvious candidates, a Keith Lee, you mentioned Brock Lesnar before, that's always a top name, that you're looking forward to the most in facing in NXT and again, beyond in Raw and SmackDown?
I think Daniel Bryan will be an outstanding match. One day when we get to it, will be absolutely killer. Bray Wyatt is another one that many people want to see. And I think Shinsuke Nakamura will be an excellent match. Yeah,
all three of those I think would be great for very different reasons. Final question for you. You celebrated a birthday this past week. How does the menacing Karrion Kross celebrate a birthday, or does he not?
He sits in the dark and he drinks black coffee and doesn't talk to anyone.
Hey, that's a great way to spend the day going into Wednesday's match with Dijakovic. Best of luck on Wednesday, Karrion. Very much appreciate the time. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you very much.